Hi everyone, welcome to today's MarketingBitz webinar. Today's webinar is titled Hiring the Right Marketing Agency for Your Business, the Do's and the Don'ts. And it's going to be presented by Scott Freeborn and Dan Sundgren of Freegren. Also, just to answer this question before anybody has a chance to ask it, yes, you will receive a recording of the webinar in a follow-up email sometime tomorrow. And you're also going to receive a link to the presentation with notes. So don't worry too much about taking vigorous notes today. Focus on what the speakers are saying and you'll receive the recording. Before we get started with the presentation, I'd like to just tell you a little bit about the LSA, the hosting organization. So LSA stands for Local Search Association, and we are a trade association based in Michigan. And our membership is traditional digital advertising and marketing providers, many of whom work directly with local businesses like yourself. So for example, Google is a member, Facebook is a member, Twitter is a member, Yelp is a member, and then we also have smaller digital marketing agencies with a more local focus. The LSA is made up of more than 300 members in about 20 countries. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Dan and Scott to start off today's webinar. If anybody does have any questions throughout the course of the webinar, please enter them in the questions box on the lower right-hand side of your screen, and we'll get to those at the end.
Super, thanks Becky. This is Dan Sundgren talking, and I've got Scott Freeborn here. Hi there. And thanks for joining us today. We hope that this is a highly informative and interesting presentation, if you will. We're going to try and keep it fairly short so we have lots of time for Q&A. The session is scheduled for an hour, but we don't anticipate this being longer than 20-30 minutes, so it leaves us a lot of time for questions and answers. And we're going to do our best to give you honest and transparent opinions on what we see in the marketplace and how we think we could help you, and hopefully you get that takeaway from going through this with us today. So who are we? Who are these guys? This is Dan talking again. I'm the guy on the left. Scott's on the right. I'll give you a quick intro to our agency to start. We do three primary things at Freegren. SEM, PPC, pay-per-click advertising, Google AdWords being the big gorilla in that space, search engine optimization, which is your organic optimization and search marketing there, and then the third piece that we really focus on is our website development and hosting. Everything from developing and building brand new sites from scratch or overhauling old sites that need an update and a refresh, and hosting those sites in a very secure environment, and we have a development team behind that effort. I would say that at our core, our agency is really what we call a direct response marketing agency. We primarily focus on Google and then Bing, and our primary directive for our clients and working with them is to make their phone ring and to generate leads and pure business. We don't do a lot of fluffy brand work. We really don't dabble, and we'll touch on this later, in the social media space per se, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And we also focus on small to medium-sized businesses here regionally in the Northwest, in the Seattle area. We're here in Seattle, Washington right now. To add to that, we also focus primarily on the service industry verticals. Companies in the service industry, as you can well guess, plumbers, doctors, lawyers, those types of folks. And we do some B2B, business to business as well. So I'll give you a quick career overview of myself, and Scott can give you a quick overview of where we come from and what we're cut from. I've been involved in digital marketing since 1999, not to date myself. So I'm coming up on 20 years of digital marketing, and I've been lucky enough to do a lot of different things in the space. So I worked for AOL Time Warner in selling advertising and media back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I worked for trade associations in digital marketing. I've founded a couple groups for networking up here in the Northwest. And I was very lucky and fortunate to join Google in 2003. And there was 4 of us that opened the Seattle office for Google here in 2003, and just had a blast working with some of Google's largest clients up here in the Northwest. I've worked in-house for very large programs and built marketing teams. For a couple different companies, and I've worked on the agency side for a couple different agencies as well. So I kind of quite a mixed bag of experience and background. So I'll turn it over to Scott to give you a quick overview of his background.
My overview is not as glamorous as Dan's, but I've been helping small businesses passionately for going on 25 years. I think Dan and I combined have got almost 50 years in this space. Worked with a variety of products, variety of clients on the large side, on the small side. Mainly in the last 10 years specializing in larger digital spend programs as the world transitioned from the old world media to primarily digital, especially in the market that we're in. So I'll keep mine nice and simple, but again, working with companies like yours for the last 25 years.
All right, so that's enough about us. Let's talk about you and how we can hopefully help you navigate the agency partner world. So this is actually one of my favorite ad campaigns. I don't know if any of you remember the Career Builder monkeys, but I think they're hilarious, and I think they did a great job with that campaign. One of the first questions that we thought about when we put this together was, do you even really need an agency or partner, and why do you need it? And start with that question. We do talk to businesses that are what you'd call maxed out, that don't really truly need more business. And that's actually an okay thing. You know, we talk to companies that have one truck, and that's sort of where they want to be, and it's family run, and they're really comfortable where they are. And those are good questions to ask. Or perhaps you're really aggressive and you want 4 new locations in the next 18 months, and you're really going guns. But these questions are good things to start with. As you can guess, a lot of SMBs are seasonal businesses. So sometimes you're really busy during the summer, for instance, but in the winter, that's when you really want your phone to ring. So what do you want to look for in a partner that can help you make the phone ring in the off season or shoulder season? And then, you know, the question turns from there to really, what does your existing marketing look like? And that's really the, you know, the discipline of sitting down and writing out what are you doing today? It could be a Valpak coupon. It could be a radio ad that you tried once. I mean, whatever you've been doing, like, what does that look like, so you sort of have that framework moving forward? And then we'll get into goals later in the presentation. And these are questions that shouldn't really be answered by your existing marketing partner if you have one. You really need a third-party opinion that's objective and fair, someone you can trust. And that's part of that vetting process, and going through the process of finding a new agency or partner or replacing your existing one. Hopefully, when you talk to several and interview them, they can help you steer you towards sort of why you need an agency partner and what programs are out there that are aligned best to your business. There's sort of 2 flavors of marketing. You know, the in-house flavor, we call it in-house. So if you have someone in the office that's currently doing your marketing, or maybe a handful of people if you're a bit bigger company, evaluating that approach and the goods and bads to having someone in-house or a small team in-house. If you do it in-house, do you have the time, the knowledge, and expertise to be doing it in this ever-changing landscape of marketing? And is the return on your ad spend or return on investment there for doing it on your own? You can really frame that out and start to ask those hard questions on, does it make the most sense to do that, or should you outsource it to a partner? And then how do you think it's performing? You know, for what you're spending and the time and energy you're putting into it, are you really getting the most return on that effort? Common goals that we really look at when we talk to different folks and we start the conversation are, you know, this is back to that direct response marketing element. Phone calls, leads or reservation forms, contact us forms, bookings, new and emerging text and SMS engagement, generating quality or pre-qualified traffic to your site is actually an important thing, although it's sort of a bigger picture outcome to doing marketing. It's important. And all of these things obviously generate revenue for your business. So how are you approaching that, and how does that look? So the next piece here is, what are your goals? We've got one of our favorite players up here in the Northwest, good old Clint Dempsey. He's the man, scoring one of his many goals. So what are your goals? And this is a good thing to go through as well. I mean, is your goal to really grow your business, and by how much? Are you a single or multiple location company, and how do those goals align to your growth expectations? And how do you view your different locations if you have multi-location? Is, again, back to the earlier slide, is your goal to maintain your business as it is today and not lose ground, or is it to actually grow it? And you know, these answers are different for every business. A lot of goals we hear from customers are, I like our current customer base to a degree, but I want to grow our higher value customers, whatever that is. Or I want to move my business to a higher margin component of the business and stop focusing on this lower margin business that isn't really making my numbers work. Outside of just going out and paying for advertising or paying a specialist to increase your organic optimization, there's this component of improving your digital footprint and your digital presence across the entire internet. And what I mean by that is really aligning yourself with a partner that maybe initially at least isn't doing pay-per-click advertising and isn't really doing what we would think of as traditional SEO or organic, but really establishing that digital footprint. There's a lot of companies out there, some large ones like Yext, that help you with reputation management and your directory listing feeds and your name, address, phone, and making sure that it's being fed correctly across all of the different pockets of the web. It's things like managing your Google My Business listing so that you present your company in the best manner possible to Google in their platform. And things like Yelp and Angie's List, and making sure that you have the best listings there and you're monitoring the reviews. Those are sort of what we call those blocking and tackling digital footprint, digital presence items. And that can be a great place to start before you get into SEM or SEO. For some clients, they're doing all of the above and adding on social and branding and offline media, etc. So it just depends on the business, obviously. But really aligning your goals to understanding your metrics is important. So what do your current metrics look like? How can you improve your data insights? We always recommend having an analytics platform in place. There's a lot of them out there. The big one is, again, back to Google Analytics. It's free. It's easy to install. Any website can take the Google Analytics code. And once you have it installed, you can look at all of your traffic data for perpetuity, so moving forward. And if you don't have that, at the very least, if you take one thing away, make sure you have Google Analytics, so at least in-house you're looking at all of your data on your website and your digital presence. Other metrics to look at are Google My Business. Once you claim that and establish that, you can look at data on how people are finding you there. That's, again, that's free traffic to you, and a worthwhile exercise to go through to establish your brand and to monitor your metrics around your brand and your company. Google Insights, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of different ways to look at metrics. We could talk for probably a whole hour on just metrics and how they align. But really the important thing is establishing those benchmarks so that you can start to craft your goals and where you want to go. How do you find a great, not good partner? We're of the mind that good is good enough, but great is where you want to be. So there's a lot of different resources out there to help you vet this process, and we walk through a few different bullet points here, and I'll outline those for you. You can use the Google Partner Directory, and the link is in the notes, which we'll have for you afterwards. Those are certified Google partners that have been accredited by them and have a certain number of individuals that have different discipline expertise across the Google platform. The LSA vendor directory is a great place to start as well, and we put the link in there. Even something as simple as checking the Google My Business for an agency and looking at the reviews can be helpful when you start to do some exploratory things to find the right partner. One of the things that we really want to impress on you is that don't discount word of mouth and talking to other business owners. They don't necessarily need to be in your space and direct competitors, but talk to folks that you know in the business world and find out who they're using and what they do and don't like and what kind of expertise they lend and how they bill and those types of things. That can be really powerful. Just get out there and network a little bit. They might also help you understand what agencies or marketing partners in your local market have good or conversely terrible reputations, kind of the ones to stay away from. So you can learn a ton by just talking to other folks. We have a note in here to right-size your new partner. And what I mean by right-sizing is, like businesses, they don't all fit equally. So some agencies that you might reach out to would require a minimum fee that's just exorbitantly too high for your company because they're a larger shop or they have more larger marketing spend type clients. You might talk to an agency and their minimum fee is $5,000 a month, and that would be their fee. That doesn't include media or anything else. And they might be great work, and they might be built for a different beast than what your business really needs. Some on the other end of the continuum are literally, what I call the one man in the basement with the dog, the one man operation. But that might fit you. You never know. It might be a really hungry person that just works on their own and they're independent and they're good at what they do and they have a small client roster. So there's quite a wide variety of flavors of agencies and marketing partners out there is what we're saying. What we can generally tell you stereotypically is that the larger the agency, the more expensive and the lesser your chance of even getting a response. And we hear this from a lot of small and medium businesses. Hey, I reached out to the top 3 digital marketing agencies in my city and none of them are even calling me back. Well, they looked at your lead form and just decided, they looked at your website and decided to punt you. They don't really think that you're even worth talking to because they're probably hunting Fortune 1000 companies, and that's the reality of the world. It can be hard to find the right partner. You have to put some time and energy into it. I'm going to touch on what I call the big box companies, the big platform companies. There's large marketing platform companies out there, and this is just my personal opinion, they do a marginal job at best. They really have these templatized approaches to scale, and I understand why they do, because you just can't give great service or I don't believe domain expertise to 1,000 up to 100,000 companies all under one system. The caveat being that a smaller, more hands-on agency that A, cares about your business and goals, and B, is really good at their craft, and that's important, will always outperform and out-hustle a big box. And that's why there's still this wonderful, vibrant cottage community of vendors and partners out there to help you with your digital marketing needs. Every city in America has literally dozens of what I would call smaller agencies that do great work. They really care about their clients, and they have the time and the capability to be very responsive and really align your programs in the right way. And that's really what we're talking about. Technology, as you all know, is changing really fast, and your marketing partner should be on top of those changes, whether it's organic or paid or social or any of the new flavors of technology and ways to reach your business clients. So you want someone that is on top of that and is in the know on what is coming down the pipe and what has been changing, because it does move fast. Another few things to think about when you're vetting these partners and talking to different agencies is, from your first contact and your initial discussion, do you genuinely like the partner? They should be amicable, easy to work with. Maybe we're a little Pollyanna in that way, but we honestly believe that you should like each other. You should never feel put out by talking with them or get a sense that you're too small to matter. If you're too small for their minimums and their level of service, they should just tell you up front, look, our minimums are $3,000 a month in fees, and it's just not a good fit, but good luck to you. And to take it a level further, I think a good bigger shop maybe that isn't a good fit for whatever reason, maybe they should give you a couple ideas of folks to talk to around town that they trust and think are good. But that's all good stuff, because there's a ton of different sizes of companies and agencies out there. You see one that's a great fit for you. So key takeaway here is this process does take time. I know everyone's busy running their business, and that's sort of that's the rub, right? You don't have time to learn Google and algorithms and what's coming down the pipe, but you do have to spend time in vetting this person or this agency, because it's going to be hopefully, if you pick the right one and they're great, They're gonna be your marketing partner, and you can sleep well at night knowing that your hard-earned dollars are going to be spent to help grow your business. So let's talk about dollars. You should know all the time where your media is being spent, what work is being done for what services, and it's all clearly outlined. The agency should be absolutely willing to give you a detailed breakdown of all work performed across different disciplines and channels. And we believe that all great partners are 100% transparent. There's no smoke and mirrors, and everything is very clear and easy to understand. Little Portlandia gets here. Fred Armisen. I don't know if anyone watches the show, but you know the and asking a bunch of questions. So you should ask a ton of questions, and it's okay. So questions are, and again, these are in the notes. How do you work with your clients? What kind of reporting do you provide? How do you interact with clients? What's the cadence? How much time do you really understand? How much time do you spend really understanding my industry, my business, and my goals? Those are really important things to get a feel for. We're a big advocate of references. Anyone worth their salt should have at least 2 to maybe 3 references that you can pick up the phone and call, and they'll call you back and talk to you about their program and how it's running and how they work with the agency. What are your areas of expertise? There's a lot of different disciplines, I call them, out there from, and we outlined earlier, we really focus on 3, but there's another dozen, from email to CRM, you name it. There's a ton of different industry disciplines out there. So what do you really focus on? What are you good at? Other questions to remember are, how do you measure success? What's your track record of driving results? Hopefully they can give you some real-world case study type responses to that. How much experience do you have in your area of expertise? Other questions like, do you focus on national versus local clients? And do you have expertise related to my business? That's a little bit of a two-edged sword, because you don't obviously want to be lumped in with all of your competitors with one agency, but it is nice to know that, hey, I worked with a coffee company in the past, or we have one that's adjacent to your industry. They're not a direct competitor, but I understand your industry a little bit. How big is the agency? People-wise, who's going to be working on my business? We think this is critical. So am I able to reach those people when I need to, and can I talk to them before we get up and running? I think these are all very, very highly relevant questions, and not anything that you should be shy to ask. You can ask questions like, how do you stack up on the pricing continuum? Cheapest is rarely the best, and conversely, the most expensive usually isn't either. So there's a bit of a sweet spot there. And talking about pricing is something that needs to be addressed for sure. Reports and metrics. So what does a sample report look like? When we're out talking to different folks, we see just a rainbow of different flavors and varieties of reports, and some are super helpful, and some are, to be blunt, they're just worthless. They don't really tell you anything about what you're driving. So what kind of metrics and data can you expect to receive? And that communication cadence is critical. So you can ask questions like, do I get a report once a month? Do you check in once a quarter? Do we have in-person meetings? Do we meet more frequently at the beginning and then it tails off? I mean, these are all really good things to ask. So I want to touch on data. You should and absolutely should ask for your data, and you should own all of your data. When I say own it, you should have logins to all of your data sources, meaning AdWords, Google Analytics, any of the platforms and services, SEO tools that your partner uses. We feel that transparency is critical in being the owner of your data sources, so that if you did happen to part ways, you could walk away with all of your data and it wouldn't be a hiccup. You wouldn't have to hunt things down, or it's in someone's head, or it's a password that you don't have access to. We think that's critical. Let's touch on fees. How do you charge fees? What are your minimum spend amounts, and are your budgets flexible for seasonality? In the spirit of doing the right thing, there are businesses out there that get really slow certain times of the year, and other times they really need to ramp it up. So you need to kind of touch on that with your potential partner and make sure that you're all on board with that. And when you are slow, what are the minimum spend amounts and what are my fees going to be? This is another one that we're going to touch into in the next slide. Do you require contracts? And if you do, what are the out clauses? Is there early termination fees for contracts? Do you require setup fees for both SEM and SEO? That's a fairly standard practice in the industry. And what are those? And what does that entail? What do I get? And then the last couple things here, what accreditations does your team have, whether it's Google or Bing or SEO? And is the person or team working on your account Google AdWords certified? And do they stay on top of the continually changing SEO landscape? I think Google changes their algorithm at least daily, if not several times a week. So moving on to contracts. We're going to wrap up here in a few minutes, but our philosophy is that if you follow the preceding questions that we just outlined, it'll really open up a solid line of communication and level set the understanding of your work and your goals. You should never be bound to an onerous agreement. And this is going to be an evolving relationship. There needs to be a trust level up front. So as a client, you need to invest some time and, of course, money into your digital marketing program. So please don't go into it with a set it and forget it attitude. Client involvement really, in our opinion, can make or break good strategy and execution. A lot of times you can be the best agency in the world and do the greatest work, but if you don't have that line of communication working with your client to understand the business, you're kind of dead in the water. Conversely, your agency and marketing partner should be showing you the results and optimizing what does and doesn't work and have a solid line of communication with you in good times and when things get tough, and it happens. Sometimes situations will arise when you can be more impressed by how your partner handled an obstacle, an error, or someone screwed up a setting or whatever than when they're kicking ass for you and everything's rainbows and unicorns. So those are some outline types of things to think about with contracts versus service agreements. We prefer a service agreement approach. What I mean by that is it's really a month-to-month agreement, and it clearly outlines the scope of the programs, the work that will be performed. It's very simple. It's 2 pages. It's clear, and you do not need a lawyer to read it. And that's just our sort of, our Northern Star. We really use that with our clients to understand what's going to be performed and how it's going to be billed. So here's some red flags that we see. And these are things that you should definitely ask yourself if you're seeing these things. So an agency wants you to enter into a contract on their timeline, not yours. Anything that's inflexible in a long-term contract you're bound to, whether it's flat rate or contract buyout penalties, even if your PPC or SEO spend is 0. Other red flags are no clear understanding of how much budget is allocated to what channels, whether it's Google or Bing or you know, any of the other channels out there. And then guarantees for SEO and SEM. Nothing's a guarantee in life. Anyone that says we'll guarantee you position 1 or this type of response, I would definitely raise a red flag on that. So I want to give you a quick overview. We've been talking a lot about Google and why Google is so important, but really they own the hand raisers of the internet. So Google accounts for roughly 65% of desktop searches in the US, and Bing and Yahoo are around 30%. However, mobile is dominated by Google, especially with the Android device and their platform. They own over 95% of mobile. So it really is a Google world, and we just live in it, right? We are big advocates of search marketing because it's such a direct response marketing channel. It's the bullseye on the dartboard. People are literally looking for your company to spend money, and with targeted keywords and really tight geo parameters on that targeting, once they visit your site or phone call, they're really yours to lose. And we could get into a whole other conversation on landing page optimization and optimizing your site, but that's just sort of the big picture. Is Google really owns these people that are really looking for service right now. Some resources and links that we embedded in the deck. This slide actually is from Chief Martech. If you go to chiefmartech.com, you can see the marketing landscape. This is the top 5,000 marketing providers and services out there and technologies. It is a vast ocean of different services, and it's daunting. I mean, it's even daunting for those of us that have been doing this for 20 years. What I will leave you with is these 3 links that I think are really great resources if you want to put your nose in the business a little bit. There's a guy up here named Rand Fishkin at Moz, and I put the link moz.com. He's a great resource. He talks a lot about SEO and less PPC, and he has some free SEO tools on his website that we recommend. And he's an overall good guy, and I think he's in it for the right reasons. And then 2 of the big search marketing blogs and sites out there, Search Engine Land and Search Engine Watch. And we put a link to those 2 as well as the Search Engine Watch glossary. So it's a really solid glossary that can kind of get you up to speed on the lingo of digital marketing, because there's a lot of jargon out there and acronyms, and that can kind of keep you up to date and informed on how to talk the language a little bit. So without further ado, we'd love to go into some Q&A. Thanks for listening to our long-winded, one-directional speech here. But we'd love to interact and help you guys out however we can. So thanks for having us, Becky.
No, it was fantastic. Thank you so much for all that really great information. I recognize, anybody in the audience who might feel a little overwhelmed, because there is obviously a lot to know. But I just want to reiterate for anyone who missed the beginning of the presentation, you are going to receive a recording of this webinar as well as the link to the presentation with the notes tomorrow in your email. So, don't freak out if you didn't write everything down and you can't remember everything that was said, because you'll get a chance to recap tomorrow. But without further ado, we do want to invite people to ask any kinds of questions that you have. We want this to be a conversation, so no question is a dumb question. We've got a couple in already. So one of the questions that I received earlier, let me get to it. Okay, so this is not so much a question about agencies, but it's a question about just a marketing tactic, I suppose, but I think you guys could still probably give your advice. So this person is asking, for a local business, like a summer, e.g. a summer camp for kids, would you spend advertising dollars on AdWords or Facebook if you could only choose one, and why?
I would probably go the Facebook route. We're advocates of the blender approach, so you can do a targeted AdWords campaign for some seasonality, obviously if there's a ramp-up period. But for a camp like that, raising awareness, and that gets to what Dan was talking about, is know your market, know your target market, and look at the demographics. The nice thing about all of these platforms is you can truly dial in to your target audience so much more than you could a year, 2, 3 years ago. So there's without talking to that individual and diving into their unique goals and what they want to accomplish, which for a camp is obviously bring kids in, but is it more awareness? Is it scheduling, making it easy to schedule? So just utilize all of the channels, and then again, look at the demographics, look at the data, and just truly ask yourself, what are you trying to accomplish in selecting that? But I would not limit just to one. Piggyback. Yeah,
and I would add to that. We talked a lot about Google, but we're actually pretty agnostic, and
100%.
We're agnostic to the point where we say, well, we don't really do social media per se in any heavy way, but if that's the right channel, we absolutely would recommend that to a client. When you're sending your children somewhere, that's probably one of the more top 10 important things you do. There's a trust and review component there that you're just not going to get with an AdWords ad, right? You can convey that on your website, and that's great. But I think with that review and that community ecosystem, Facebook, in my opinion, kind of basically understanding kids camps would probably be the best channel out of the shoot. And then once you max out that ad platform, then maybe look at some Google keyword buys.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the next question we have is related to hiring an agency. It's a pretty good question. So is it better to hire multiple agencies to handle the different channels, i.e. like search, social, etc., or a single agency to handle all of your channels?
Yeah, that's highly dependent on your business and what you do. In a perfect world, you would have one shop do everything for you, and I think there's great value to that. I think the flip side of that is you're sort of spreading yourself too thin, because there aren't a lot of agencies out there that do everything really, really well. And when I say everything, I mean the full gamut of, the marketing stack, from email to CRM to PPC to SEO to social media to branding to offline media. I mean, there's a whole rainbow of things to do out there. If I had my druthers and I owned a medium-sized business and I knew what I wanted, but I wanted to be spread across like 6 different types of marketing channels, I would tend to say there's probably a sound argument to have 2 or 3 different agencies that are really good at their discipline than one that can do all of them, if that makes sense. Even though it's a little bit more effort and you have to multi-manage different disciplines.
Sure. Okay. So we're getting a lot of really great questions here, so please keep them coming, and we're going to try to get to all of them. The next question is asking for resources or methods, and this might be an individual follow-up for you guys, Scott and Dan, but asking for additional resources and methods on how to determine what your advertising budgets should be. So I don't know if you guys have, links to resources or suggestions for that, or if it's something that you'd rather follow up on personally.
I would say initially it's based on what you're comfortable with, what you have been spending or what you're comfortable allocating. And then from there, it really gets into the data. So if you're running an AdWords campaign, and this is real general, but if you're spending, say, $2,000 a month, and your AdWords campaign is dialed into the geographic area and the keyword set that you want, and the data shows, and you're seeing a lift on your end. And we just had this with a client that we took on, a brand new client, that 2 months into her campaign, she was asking us, do I need to spend more money? And obviously from an agency side, in old days, it was very easy for people just to say, yeah, sure, give me more money. But in today's world, looking at the data, in this example, looking at what's called the impression share inside of your Google AdWords campaign, if you see that you are running a 30% impression share and you're spending, say, $2,000 a month, we can go to you and objectively say, yes, there is room there to spend more money. Conversely, if you're spending $2,000 a month and your impression share is, say, 85, 90%, there's not a whole lot of room there to increase that in that channel. So
yeah,
right.
It all comes down to metrics. If you're not tracking the end result, your return on ad spend, then you can't make that decision.
Correct.
So if you're spending $2,000 a month and you sort of think the phones are ringing and you don't have hard numbers on your cost per call, you don't have the calls recorded, you're not be able to listen to them from your whatever marketing channel, you don't have cost per lead form, closed business numbers, you're flying blind. So you need to set that up first and make sure that you know those numbers. And then when you want more and you can open up the spigot, then you can spend more.
Okay, so basically set up tracking, some sort of tracking with the analytics for any of the channels that you plan on spending advertising dollars on. And then once that's set up, perhaps like just put, $100 into it or something to test it and see how it's performing, and then make adjustments accordingly?
Exactly.
If you're just getting started? Okay.
If for Google, for instance, you can pay $1 per click depending on your business, or we have clients that spend $100 a click. And so there's just a wide range and that's just all dependent on how competitive that ad auction is and how much other companies are willing to spend against you. So there's a whole lot of ambiguity there, but the net of it is you don't have to start off with $5 or $10,000. You can start small and grow, and a good partner will understand that.
Okay.
And I'll add to that and finish, Becky, is, we talk a lot about data. It's easy to get, make the whites of your eyes roll back with all the data that's available to us and a business owner if they're doing it on their own. Is we always, ask people and tell people, you're the best barometer, you the business owner. Are you seeing a lift? Because you know your business. We can give you all the data in the world and tell you what you're supposed to do and what you need to do. But you, the business owner, are you seeing the fruits of that spend marketing-wise?
Okay. All right, we're going to move on to the next question. asking, hold on, let me read it. Okay, so this individual is asking, should we choose an agency that will create our website for us, or one that can also add on marketing services later on down the road? So I think what she might be asking is, if we start working with an agency, oh, sorry, I missed part of the question, that's why I was confused. We're starting with our website overhaul and we'll eventually branch out to social media and more intentional marketing. So should we choose an agency that will do our website for us, or one that can also add on marketing services later on down the road? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what we've seen is, this gets back to one of the slides that Dan was going through. We call them different silos. So a web designer, and I'm generalizing, so I'm not, no offense to any web designers that might be on, but what is the skill set? If somebody's really good at designing a website, that doesn't mean they're going to be a good intentional marketing person or a good social media channel. The approach that we take is bringing ideally everything under one roof, and we manage those skill sets. So we have, say, a web department and a SEO person, SEO group, and we've got an AdWords group as well, and then dig into social media. What we found is if you lean on those silos individually, it's better than having one person attempt to do everything, if that makes sense.
And what I've seen over the years, to generalize again, is not having that SEO eye towards the site from the initial get-go, and then having to tear into it, rip it apart, and redo a lot of the work. Because to grossly generalize again, most web design shops, they do great work and they look pretty and they're great, but they're not built for site speed. They're super heavy. Simple things like they weren't built in HTTPS, which is secure SSL, which you have to do today. So there's a lot of those blocking and tackling type questions. It's easier to hit it up front. It's, the analogy of you built a house and then you decide to put the plumbing in, right?
Sure. So you should be working to design your website overhaul with a company who kind of has a more integrated understanding or approach to it, like understands, the fundamentals of SEO and like all that kind of stuff, because then that way down the road, you're not going to have to deal with the pain of redoing it all over again. Exactly,
and they're building the site with flexibility for future growth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. So we're getting a lot of specific questions related to, specific types of businesses. But one repeat sort of theme that I'm seeing here is that people, small businesses operate on a tight budget, and they're looking for someone who can, who has proven performance results or kind of thing, proven success. So with that in mind, what would you recommend for a small business who's getting started? Maybe they are interested in a marketing partner, but they do work on a very, very tight budget. How do you think they can find, what's like one or two steps they can take to find the best partner for them who won't charge, over what they're willing to spend or able to spend?
I would say depending, and this gets back to the do-it-yourself slide, there's a lot of tools out there. So some of the people we've talked to, we've recommended that they utilize like the AdWords Express, or we've talked about the Google My Business, and doing some of it on their own initially. Because the reality is, let's say like we're here in the Seattle market, if you have a very, very limited budget, and I don't know what the person that asked the question, everybody's definition of a limited budget is different. For a big service company, a small budget might be a couple $1,000s. If I'm a one-man painter or contractor, flooring contractor, my limited budget might be $500. So I think it's, and we can do a follow-up with whoever asked that question if they want to email us.
Sure.
So again, in generalizing, it's kind of defining what your budget is, what you want to get out of it. Does it make sense to do it on your own, or does it make sense to, challenge yourself and get outside of your comfort zone a little bit budget-wise, trusting that partner that you choose looking at the data and making sure that's being spent in the correct area and correct channels, and again, doing testing and seeing if you're getting that lift. We're not advocates of just spending money to spend money, but it is what we've seen, and this is backed up by data. Those that spend a little bit more money than they're comfortable with, at least initially, you do get a bigger lift. Because you don't want to spread yourself too thin, and that gets to that impression share if we're specifically talking about Google. If you're only going to, if you're like Dan talked about, let's say your click is $30 a day, so that would be on average before any service fees. Let's call it $1,000 budget for the month, 30 times 30. Well, that's one click a day. How many clicks does it take for you to get a phone call, and what are your success metrics off of that? I think sometimes for folks that have smaller budgets, if they lay it out that way, they'll see exactly before they spend a dollar, what can I get for this? We provide more data to people on the front end, even if they don't become clients, just walking them through that process. And we're happy to talk to anybody. So
yeah, and I would ask that.
Awesome.
Here's the good news to that question, and I'll wrap it. We've never been more blessed with marketing platforms as we are today.
Mm-hmm.
So 15 years ago, you could not do a fraction of what we can do today with, say, Google. You can be a kind of a techno idiot, not to be a jerk, but you can be pretty non-conversant with tech, and you go in and build a Google account, put in some keywords, bone up a little bit on match type, and target 3 zip codes to start with a very modest budget, and self-manage it to see what you get. I mean, literally $50 a month, $100 a month. So we have some pretty easy tools, and Google's working harder and harder, for instance, to make that easier and easier for any business to do.
Sure. So it's kind of like it's kind of a blessing because you can do a lot more of it yourself and track a lot more of it yourself. It's just a curse in that you have to learn how to do that and take the time to do that.
Yeah, and they're vast platforms. That's why they've created lighter versions. So
you know what I would suggest? Why don't we advance to the next slide? I think it's got the emails on it, just so I can make an announcement to people real quick. Okay, so what I would recommend too is definitely if you have a specific question related to your specific industry or your specific business, maybe you're in like a unique situation and you just kind of need some advice or want to ask for some help from Dan or Scott, you can email us at info@marketingbitz.com and we'll put you in contact with the speakers. And then I believe that you guys included an email in the notes of the presentation as well, right? Like a free grant email?
We did. We'd be happy. Feel free. Do not hesitate to reach out. Our rule of thumb is to get back to people by the end of the business day. So
awesome. Yeah, because some of these very specific questions just might be a little bit difficult to answer without knowing more information about your business. So if you do have a specific question, always feel free to email us at info@marketingbitz.com, or you can email them at the email that you're going to receive tomorrow in the presentation. I do have a couple more general questions, though, before we wrap things up.
Okay.
One person has a good question. They're saying, I'm running a Facebook ad, but if I want to run it by someone to make sure I'm doing it correctly or see if they have any advice, are there any resources for that? So, not necessarily hiring an agency to take over the ad, but just wanting someone to look at it and provide advice. What would you recommend in that scenario?
Yeah, we actually had this situation with a client. Because I get out and network and talk to a lot of folks, I actually know a couple different Facebook consultants. Mm-hmm. And we had a client that engaged with someone that I referred them to, and they did a 30-day project scope for not a ton of money. And this Facebook expert really helped them set up the house, how to write snappier content and copy, what pictures to include, how to use hashtags, and really got them off to the races and really teach them how to fish. So I think by networking around your local marketplace or your city, and maybe finding someone that can help you set up the house that would be willing to help you learn how to fish would be a great way to approach that.
Agreed.
Okay, fantastic.
You see, yeah.
Yeah, no, and I would agree. I think there are scenarios where you can, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but there are scenarios where you can hire someone to just work on like one specific project, or there's like definitely resources out there, especially with Facebook, where like Facebook Blueprint is one resource that I've used personally. That's just like this enormous, massive tutorial resource where you can learn anything that you need to learn about Facebook. If you have like a specific, you know, channel that you're working on or something, there's easy workarounds to do that.
Yep. And there's actually, to that point, Becky, there's a couple larger gig economy platforms out there where you can hire freelancers that are really good at their work from all over the world, actually. You can also filter by U.S. So those gig economy platforms are an interesting angle.
I was just going to say that might be an interesting resource to provide people as well if you guys have like a link to, you know, somewhere where they can access that. I think that would be really helpful. So we can include that in the follow-up tomorrow too.
You bet.
Awesome. Okay, so another question we have is kind of about, all right, so this person has a Google AdWords account and they've had one for a couple of years, but it's kind of like a question about getting spam phone calls. So they get a lot of and I've had this experience too, they get a lot of phone calls from companies saying they need to verify your Google account. It's been verified though. So how do you know when it's a scam? Like this is kind of a safety thing. Like how do you know when someone's calling you and it's a scam, you know, trying to verify your account, and how do you know when it's actually legit? Do you guys have like a response to that question?
Yeah. Call 8662 Google and have them look up your account and tell you.
Right, and then they can tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. They generally aren't going to call you though.
Okay. Yeah. So pretty much usually if you get a call, it's not good.
Yeah.
That's the eternal issue, is everybody gets a phone call just because Google's the 800-pound gorilla in the space.
Right.
Everybody gets phone calls, and the folks that
including us.
Yeah, we get them as well as soon as we set our account up. Everybody gets 15, 20, 25 phone calls a week saying that they are Google, that they are calling to take things over. They can assist them, that they are Google. I would probably say 99% of those calls are not Google. There may be 1 out of 100, but what we've seen is unless you are subscribing to a service that needs to verify your account, it's a junk phone call. If you're running your AdWords campaign, there should be no reason for anybody to call you.
And they mail you an old school postcard actually to verify your address. So
exactly.
Yeah, and there's not really any way to get them to stop the spam calls, right? Because they just come from like a variety of sources.
We get them every day as well.
Yep, so do I. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's Google's best interest to filter that too, because that definitely dilutes their platform and their money machine.
For sure.
So they're working hard to trim that stuff out. There's actually, to that point, in AdWords, there's an invalid click setting where you can see how many clicks you didn't pay for that Google counted as spam or bots or whatever that you don't pay for. They're constantly filtering out invalid clicks.
Sure. Sorry, I was reading the rest of the questions. So I'll say as a general announcement too, if we aren't able to get to your question today, all of these questions are going to be forwarded to Scott and Dan, and so they can follow up with you individually, so don't worry about that. Just because we did get a lot of questions and a couple of them we might not be able to get to. So we'll ask one more question and then I'll kind of wrap things up with final thoughts. And this is actually an interesting question about blogging. So this person says, it looks like he works for an agency. My agency really focuses on blogging for a small local tutoring company. Do you see any value in blogging for a small business like this, or do you have any opinions on blogging in general? Is that a service that you might want to hire an agency for, or is that something you think you can do individually? Any feedback on that is appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's an entire category, even under the LSA member directory, for content, right? It's a whole industry unto of itself. I think what people forget sometimes is they get caught up in this black hat SEO. You got to stuff a bunch of content into a page so Google picks you up. But at the end of the day, Google does want to index really relevant information to very specific queries. I think the latest stat is 30 to 35% of all Google searches have never been searched before. So people are finding new and interesting ways to look for information. If you're writing a really, really focused article on, was it a tutoring entity in a very specific market, that's fantastic, and I think you should do more of that. Of course, there's some SEO do's and don'ts to generally how long an article you want to write, how tight you want it to be, what type of geo-specific words you want to put in it for your area, links out, etc. So there's some general, those links that we gave you for those search, like Moz and whatnot, can help you understand that a bit better, because there's an art as well as a science to SEO. But content creation is a magical, awesome thing, and original content, I think, is something that we could all use more of, because there's a lot of repurposed information on the web.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I just got one other really good question, and then I'll wrap things up. So this person says, regarding AdWords, so if you miss the 3 attempts to verify your address, like you said, they send you a postcard in the mail or whatever, what can you do about that? Because this person says that they've moved so many times in the last few years and they've lost those address verification attempts.
Move the business address or individually?
I think it's referring to a business address, verifying their business.
That's one. Feel free to reach out to us and we'll dig into it on the back end. That's one I don't have an answer for off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Okay. Nope. All good. Sorry. They clarified. They said their business address is her home. She's a sole proprietor. So does that make a difference? Or still email you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a platform that just went public, Yext, out of New York. They're fantastic. They feed a lot of the web. And you can align with a partner that can set up your Yext account and feed your name, address, phone. As far as Google goes, Google's customer service, I mean, if you call them, you can generally get someone to talk to and just explain your situation. Sure. They can help you navigate. I know for GMB, for Google My Business, they actually have a helpline. So.
Okay, cool.
Again, it does reaching out to them. Yeah, they want you to index correctly and cleanly. They're sort of flying blind unless you work with them. So.
Right. Sure. Okay. Well, I think I'm going to kind of wrap things up because we're pretty close to the hour. But so I just wanted to say thank you, everyone, again, for joining us today. If you do have more questions that you think of after the conclusion of the webinar, or if you want me to connect you with Dan or Scott, you can feel free to email me at info@marketingbitz.com. Again, my name is Becky. And then you will be receiving a recording of this webinar tomorrow, as well as a copy of the presentation with the notes in it. And in the notes is an email to email Scott and Dan as well if you have a direct question for them. I will also be sending them all of your questions in a spreadsheet. So if we didn't get a chance to get to you, they'll follow up with you personally. So thanks again for joining us, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.